Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to grecochess, the channel of the game of chess. If you've seen the previous videos, we're able to defeat, not very easily, but we defeated Jonas from Germany, the bot with a rating of 1700, and between bots, we're trying the puzzle rush. See if we can break a record of 50. But more important than the record is what are we going to learn? That is why I would like to ask you after every puzzle and once the next one shows up, please pause and try to solve it yourselves. See how can you do, and in the comments you may want to share with me how did you do in the puzzles. And of course you may want to try on your own the puzzle rush of chess.com and see how well you can do. The rules of the game: chess.com is going to throw to us one puzzle after another until we get 3 wrong. In each puzzle, I'm going to share with you my thoughts. We'll see if it's correct or not, and once we reach the 3 wrong ones, we'll go back and see what were the correct solutions. See what we can learn from them, and usually we should expect the first few ones to be very easy, made in 1 or 2 moves. But as they go on, they become tougher and tougher. And there is a point where there are 2 or 3 candidate moves and one needs to calculate very deeply to see which is the correct one. But unlike real games, there is always a solution and there is always a unique solution. And let me first share the screen with you, and we are going to start. What does this number mean? Top score 59, I got 159 when there was, as I mentioned before, an issue, and chess.com somehow was giving me the same puzzle again and again. That's why I don't count this as my real record. 37, I had some practice today, and 37 was the best I got. But let's see here in the Greco chess video, what are we going to do? And I'm hitting the play button, and off we go. Black to move is here, and this is a simple one. Checkmate in one move. I grab the white queen and it's checkmate. Number 2, again checkmate in one. Bishop takes knight, checkmate. Next one here. There are only 2 legal moves for whites, and one of them is stupid, sending the king to h1, but the other one, king to g3, should be the answer. We got it wrong. I should have pushed a pawn. Believe it or not, that's what happens when you're not careful. Here, another easy one, rook to e1, and now we better be careful. We already had one wrong unnecessarily, and that can happen in a game. Let's see what happens here. If rook goes to a8, rook can go to b8 and queen to e8, and we have mate. Next one. If queen goes to e2, it is mate. Here, queen to f2. Here, queen goes to g7. Look at the bishop of b2 that creates a battery. Here, what should we do? The first thing we always need to look are the checks. If there are mates, great. Otherwise, is there a follow-up? Queen goes to 4. White can only send the king to g1 or h1, and then rook goes to b1. Queen may be postponed by 1, but then it's mate. Here, the pin, the power of the pin. It seems that if white takes the queen, black can take back, but the pawn on g7 is pinned. So we win a queen. Next one here, we have to be careful. Rook cannot just take the pawn because white is threatening mate in 1. So we need to find at least a check. Well, we can keep, of course, the rook on the 8th rank, but so what? So pawn should go to b2. Where king go? It can go only to d1 and then pawn to b1, queen mate. Here, once again, look at the check. See if rook goes to h3, check, and black may send the knight, but then rook takes knight, each mate. Thanks, of course, to the pawn on g7 that's blocking the exit of the king. The first 12, unfortunately, we had an error out of complete carelessness. I should have thought more. It's not that the king goes next to the pawn supports, but we should push that pawn. Here it is mate in 1. Rook goes to g4. It is mate because the other rook on g8 blocks the black king. Here battery, but be careful. We don't go to g2 because the bishop will take the queen on h3. Instead, we go to h1. Here we have a wonderful pin. The rook on d7 is pinned. What happens if the rook from d2 goes to d8? I don't think black can reply. Let's see what happens here. Here, I don't think there's a mate, but there's a combination. Rook goes to g1 check. King goes to f2. Where else? Rook goes to rook goes to king to c2. Rook goes to c1 check, supported by the bishop. Here on f4, king can only go to e3. Then rook goes to e1 check. King goes anywhere, either c2 or e2. Then rook takes rook, or rook takes rook, and king takes rook. Let's see if this is the answer. Well, pawn takes rook. We are still a rook ahead. Let's see what is happening here. The white king is blocked by the black rook on c2. So if the rook from g8 goes to g3 check, knight may postpone by one move. Perhaps the bishop's a couple of more moves, but it should be made. Let's see what's happening here. Once again, look for the checks. The easiest check that comes to mind is rook from g7 goes to h7 check. Then king goes to g8. Rook from e7 to g7 check. King goes to f8 and rook goes to h8 check. Queen may interfere, but rook takes queen mate. Let's see if this is the answer. Didn't even want us to think that deeply. The knight on f3 is attacked twice by a knight on d4 and the bishop on g4, but defended twice by the bishop on g2 and the queen on d3. Of course, we can attack it a third time with the queen going to f6, but then the knight going to it's not pinned, so it can disappear. If it was pinned, this was another kind of problems, we would win it. But here, what we can do, how can we win a piece? There is a way not easy to find it, I have to say, because if knight takes knight, what can black do? They cannot take back with the queen because they lose their queen from a bishop. They have to take the bishop. Then queen takes queen. White must retaliate and win the queen. Pawn goes here and a bishop wins the knight and we are a piece ahead. Did we start with equal material? Yes, because if we started 2 pieces down and get 1 piece, we're still a piece down, we are losing. But the material is the same. If anything, we have an extra pawn. And let's see if this is the answer. Yes. Yes. And we win the extra piece. Good. What can we do here? This is the typical case of the coordination of rooks and knights. Knight goes to e2 check, and white has only one reply, king to h1. And then rook takes on h2 check, king takes the rook, nothing else. And then our rook from f5 goes to h5, and it should be mate. This problem appears rarely in real games, but often in puzzles. So if you're not in puzzles, the very few times you'll see it, it's not easy to spot it in a real game. But if you're used on a puzzle, you can spot it and win a game out of nowhere. Or on the other side, make sure your opponent doesn't get these chances. You don't want suddenly to lose your game out of nowhere. Yes, yes, and yes. Here, what can we do? It's a very tricky one, I have to say. If knight, once again, we look for checks. What checks are there? The only check to my mind is if knight goes to h3 check. Question is, if of course a king goes to h1, let's see. Queen goes to f1 check, rook takes, and then our rook is going to mate. But what if black replies some other way? If they take it to the rook, same story. No, let's see. Here, rook takes it. Queen goes here, check. King goes here. Queen here, check. Rook, and rook takes here. What if they take with a pawn? That is a tricky case because g2 square is free. Then we do the following. Check, pawn takes. Queen goes here. King goes to h1, and yes, the queen will not go to f1 because the g2 square is for grabs, but the queen now is free to go to h2 because the pawn is blocking the rook on h5. Not easy to see them during a real game. That's why we're training now. And hopefully you can get it, and if not, at least you can learn it. Let's see. Now this is the other case with the rook. And the last move. Good, we got it. Foolishly one wrong, it shouldn't be. Here, when we have knights and when on the other side king and rook are on the same color, look for a fork, and we have a fork. Knight goes to g1 check, and king will go somewhere near the rook, otherwise it looks the entire rook. Let's assume it goes here. We take, and then, oh sorry, let's do it again. I'm not very good in arrows. Assume king goes here, knight takes rook, king takes, and then a rook takes the knight. In either case, we are up by a rook. If you want to be more exact, rook minus a point because they have 4 versus 3 of ours. Yes. Let's see here what is happening. Clearly, black must take back the pawn, cannot ignore it. If they don't take it, pawn advances. Of course, you can go to a4, but then the pawn goes to b6, and black must move a king to save it. Let's first take the pawn and then try to block the white king from coming near. Yes. And now this is a crucial one. If the pawn goes here, pawn in front of the king, not easy to win. And especially if the king goes to e4, what can black king do? They have to go back. So now it is a king that needs to go here, yes. Now, do we take the pawn? What else can we do if we don't take the pawn? Yes, we got it. Here, we have checks from d1. Is it a mate or not? I think it is. I can't see white reply to that. And I'm surprised they have it so late. Yes. Out of 2 first lines, you see here each of them having 12 puzzles. Out of 24, we did 23. And unfortunately, foolishly enough, we lost puzzle number 3. We should not have lost it. It was a very easy one, but here, if rook goes to e8, what can black do? Rook to f8 and then rook to f8 should be mate. No. Rook king goes to h7, and then rook goes to h8. Unfortunately, the rook on g2 supports the knight on g6. We got it. Next one, what's happening here? Materially, white has, if anything, no, the material is the same. 2 rooks, 1 knight, and 5 pawns. Can white win more? Clearly, they can easily win the knight on e4. But then how can black retaliate? They can, if they send the pawn, let's assume, no, on e3. Rook goes to e3, wins the knight. Pawn goes to, no, then king, it's not so, if rook takes, king takes rook, not so easy. What if pawn takes pawn from f3 takes on g4? It's a check, discover from the rook. The king cannot stay next to the knight. If it goes, for example, to f5, we win the knight. If it goes anywhere else to either the e or the g, we exchange rooks, and then we win the rook. Yes, we exchange, and now we win the knight. But does black have a mate? Not I can see. Then we grab the pawn. If here we have to be careful. We start with an extra rook. But we are under check, so we must reply the check. How many legal moves we have? We only have 3 legal moves, as I can see. Either the king goes here to c8, but then black has a wonderful discover check, and most likely they'll put their bishop on e5 and win a queen, or grab the bishop. How? There are 2 ways. If you do it with the rook here is mate. So what remains by elimination? I think a queen has to take the bishop. I can't see anything else. Now we have to reply, because we are also under check. If queen takes rook, we lose a queen for a rook. If rook takes rook, no, if no rook cannot take rook. If queen takes rook, forget. If rook goes here, what's going to happen? Pieces will be exchanged. If king goes here, again, piece can be exchanged. Is there any chance for white to surprise us with the queen going to e6 check? If we go here, queen can go to e6 check, and then things can be dangerous with rook perhaps pinning the queen. So I think the best way is rook blocks. And then the best thing that white can do is exchange. Yes, we got it. Now I think this is made in one move, because rook can go to a8, and what can black do? I don't see they can do anything. 27 out of 28 correct. How many more can we do? Here black to play. Black wants to advance their pawns. If black wins the bishop, they cover their pawn, and white must take it back. And then pawn goes to b3. The king, of course, cannot catch it. If pawn goes here to a5, copying to promote first, pawn goes to b2, pawn to a6, pawn to b1 with, not with a check. Bishop goes here. And later on, hopefully we can place our queen somewhere we can catch a white queen. We'll see later how it happens. I don't see any other way to start the puzzle. No, the white king is confusing us. We can't push a pawn because we lose a pawn. We cannot win the game just with the bishop. It's time to act because, of course, white will not take a bishop because the pawn promotes, but they'll start pushing their pawn. And we need to promote a pawn before they promote theirs. And if we take the pawn once it reaches a7, then they'll take our own pawn. So how do we act? King goes from d1 to c2. And then a pawn can smoothly sail all the way to promotion. Let's see if this is the answer. Yes. Here, we start with much less material. We're down 2 rooks and a bishop. And so, yes, we can win 1 rook very easily here. But we're still down material, but it's a follow-up. If we take the rook, clearly if the king has only 2 answers. If it goes to g1, it's mate from g2. What if king goes to g3? We check from here. King goes to f4. Again, if we win the second rook, we're down a bishop, but then queen can go to g4 and it should be mate. Let's see if this is the answer. Yes, we got it. 29 of 30. Here, I'm counting. Each side, white has 17 points of material, 9 queen and 3 bishop and 5 pawn 17. Black has 16, 2 rooks 10 and the knight 13 and the 3 pawn 16. Although in such open positions, this doesn't mean too much. What can black do? Clearly, there is a nice check on f1. And then king goes to either e1 or e2. The next rook can go from f8 to f2. And king can only go here to d3. And then if rook goes to d1 check, I think that's a mate. Imagine the queen blocks its own king from escaping. Yes, that's mate. 38 of 31. What can we do here? If queen goes to a7, it should be mate unless king goes to d8. King goes to e7, preparing for mate. On a8, king, of course, cannot go to b8 because queen goes to b7 mate. If king goes to d8, queen goes to b8 check. King goes to e7. Queen to c7 check. King goes to e8, of course, queen d7 mate. If king goes anywhere else. White is starting with a rook down, so we better mate. Let's see. And just winning the pawn on c7 is not changing too much again. Even though a pawn on c6 is near promotion. But I can't think of anything else. The problem is if queen goes to e7, black may have a nasty counterplay. Queen takes a rook check, we take the queen, and then we have rooks here, and there's a nasty counter threat. What else can we do? Rook to g1, we lose a rook, clearly. Perhaps even more than that. This we equalize the material as the first step, if black decides to take a rook on f1. Don't see how else can we start an attack. We can go perhaps here on h6, hoping threatening the rook. Let's say if white is, I think the only thing is queen to a7. Yes. And so we go along the previous plan we had. Anything else? I cannot see. Queen to b8 check. Queen to c7 check. Oh, they don't want us the rest of it. Good. Here, white has an extra pawn. It's black to move. Black can check two ways, either with the knight from f3 or from the knight from f1. What is the follow-up? It seems f3 is the better. In either case, king can go, has three squares to go. In one case, it has h1 and g2, and the knight is protected by the king. If it goes to f1, king can also go to g1 and attacks the knight. So I think it's better if the knight goes to f3. But still, this does not guarantee solution. Let's see what will happen. However, king is more constrained. Rook goes to b2, check, and king can go where? If it goes to h1, can we have any kind of fork? No, the knight can check again, but I don't see anything happening. Rook goes to b2, check, and here we are. There is nothing immediate, but if the king takes the pawn on g3, then rook can go to f2 and it's mate. Can white do anything to postpone? The only check they have is rook to h3, they lose the rook. We can push the pawn, it doesn't promote. The knight cannot check on g3. So I think that is the answer. Knight takes on g3, a so-called quiet move. And this is a case where you sacrifice the queen for the back rank. Queen goes to a7 check, rook takes back, and a rook goes to e8 mate. Yes. 33 out of 34. I wish we had not unnecessarily lost the pass number 3. If queen goes to a2 check, then we win the queen and we are way ahead in material. White has no pawn anywhere near promotion. Any other way they can mate? Is there any direct mate that the puzzle will consider correct? What if the bishop goes to c2 check? No, because king can go many places. If they go here, then check from there, we just exchange queens. So I think the solution would be here, yes. Here, it may not be so simple, but I think we have a two-move mate. Queen goes from a1 to d4 check, and believe it or not, white has only one. No, oh, no, they have two legal moves. If bishop goes here, that's a mate, clearly. If knight goes here, let's do again from here. Knight goes here. Believe it or not, it's a very tricky one because queen must take the knight, pawn must take back, and look at these two wonderful rooks. Rook takes here, rook takes, and then a rook from e8 takes e1, and it is checkmate. Not easy to see. And let's hope we're not wrong, because when there are too many moves in the combination, there's always the chance that one of them may have an error. Some option you didn't see. But we're going to take the knight and see if we are correct. Yes. Yes, and the last move, mate. Good. Is this? No, it doesn't seem to be made with epaulets, because if queen goes to 6, you can have a bishop or queen blocking. What if? Oh, it's a tricky one. It's too tempting the bishop, but avoid the temptation, because if queen goes to b7, that should be mate supported by the rook on b1. Nowhere for the king to go. So we finished 3 lines with line number 4, and unfortunately, one unnecessary error, and that was it. Here we are ahead an exchange minus 2 pawns, meaning material the same. But if rook goes to d2, either we win the bishop if black does nothing, or if they place the bishop on c7 or e7, we exchange rooks and then we win the bishop. But we have an extra rook. Good, then we got the rook. Here, the pawn on d5 is pinned. That's what should one noticed. We attack it twice with a bishop on b3 and with a knight on f4, and it's defended only once with a, not only that, once the knight lands there, then we threaten the queen. So if knight takes it, so it seems that we have to take it either with a bishop or with a knight or with a bishop. Take with the knight, the good thing is we attack the queen, knight takes back, bishop takes, and then we already pawn ahead, but also we win the knight on c6. You take the bishop, knight takes, then we take the knight without a check and don't threaten it. That's why first knight should take if I'm correct. Yes, we got it. Here, very tempting to place a queen on f3 and threaten with mate, but black has two answers. Either check as here. If queen goes here, black queen can either go to e5 and start the counterattack, or put the king perhaps on f1. What else can we do? What if queen starts with a check? Then we force the king to go where? To f1, no other move. Queen goes to d3 check, king goes to e1. Let's start again the arrows until I learn them. Bishop goes to d3 check. King has only one legal move, goes to e1, and then queen goes back to its starting point, e2, and it's mate. Let's see if this is the answer. We got it. It's very tempting to place a rook on g5 check and avoid being captured by the bishop. But what will happen next? King can go either h6, and of course in this case this would be mate, or goes here, king goes here. If a knight goes to f3 check, if king goes down, then of course it's mate. But what if king goes up? We win the bishop, but this is enough. But it seems that if we start with check with, don't have any other option, the knight cannot check. If check with uh, the rook and the knight might be able to make a nice combination. So let's start like that. Now, next move. No, the knight goes to f3 check, yes. No, the king cannot go back as we thought before. That's what happens in many moves. Sometimes you lose your vision. King can only go here, and then this is mate. You see what's happening? The king protects the rook, and then the rook checks, and the two squares, h2 and h4, are controlled by the knight on f3. Good, we got 40 to 41. Not bad, but not a record. Here, the big temptation is queen to take to h2. Why? No, not even think. If the king would take it, we have a wonderful discovery. We also have the rook that can kill it. So let's not go along this path. White is doing very well, is near a king. Yes, we have enough defenses, but can we attack the queen? Got 40 out of 41, and this is good. Oh, we can pin the rook, but we win an exchange. But how's the material? We start with queen, two rooks, and three light pieces, and four pawns. How does white do? Queen, two rooks, three light pieces, six pawns. So they have two extra pawns. If we ping the rook, not only we may win an exchange, but look at that. Now with the queen can check here, supported by the rook, not the bishop in the meantime, and the rook by being pinned cannot take a queen. So I think, but what can white do? Can they check? They can check with the queen, but then I king has to think where to go. No, they cannot take the pawn. The queen is still here supporting the pawn. Oh, yeah, yeah. You see how it is for someone to become blind. Wrong. Second wrong. 40 out of 42 correct. Now let's see how can we promote. If we start exchanging, we may lose the two pawns and they are very crucial. But what if the pawn goes to h3? Can black stop it? The king can go here. Pawn goes here. King goes here. And the pawn cannot promote. Anything else? Of course, if pawn goes here and pawn takes pawn, we are winning. Pawn promotes. But that's not what... here we are. Pawn goes here. King goes to f3. Pawn goes here. And now the king goes away. Whether it takes a pawn or takes a bishop or anywhere else, a pawn promotes. Now a pawn promotes. We lose a bishop, but pawn promotes. Good. We got 41 out of 43. Okay, the one was really wrong. The other, unfortunately, we messed up. Yeah, what can we do? We can exchange rooks. No, we can. If we check from e8, nothing to gain. If we exchange rooks, queen can check from h5, and then what? I don't see any other way to start other than exchanging rooks. And then we'll see. Yes. Next move now. Queen can check from h5. If pawn goes, we take on h7. Otherwise, king can go to e7 or even any of the other squares, and so what? Can queen go to c6 and threaten check from d7 and win the bishop? The bishop may, of course, go who knows where. But then with the rook and the queen, we can have a nice combination. I cannot see all the details. Fortunately, it's not a check. Otherwise, we would lose a queen. But rook goes to d7. Queen goes now to e6. The rook on d7 blocks the black queen on c8, so we can do the check. Yes. That is a tricky one. We need to sacrifice a queen. Queen takes on f3 check. If king takes the queen, discover check from h3, and I think that is mate. Okay, maybe. Nope, we have to be careful. We give a queen. We cannot afford not to mate. Of course, if knight goes to f6 with a check, we win the knight and it's mate. But what if? We have to look at all the possibilities. Queen check, king check, bishop check. But what if knight goes to f4? And also, what if in the first move, queen goes here? Well, bishop goes here, check. What would happen if instead a bishop went here to h3? We'll win the bishop, so white needs to take back a bishop. And then we win this bishop. We threaten the knight. But queen can take a queen. We win the queen. And we only got one extra pawn. What is the material when we start? Queen, two rooks, two bishops, and we have 5 pawns. The opponent has 7, so we'll still be a pawn down. Is it worthwhile? But I cannot see any other way to start here because the queen is under attack. So either a bishop takes on h3 or the queen takes on f3. On f3, there's a possibility for mate. Now, if we take with the queen and the king takes back, then the bishop can go here. We have a double check. And the king is almost nowhere to go. If it goes here, the bishop checks from the back. If it goes here, we have another discovered check. I think that is the best. But what if the queen takes? Let's see, maybe bishop can take h3. No, wrong. So we got 42 correct. The one was unnecessarily wrong. And the first one, I know what was the answer. I'll show it with you. We take the queen. Let's hit the play problem. Here the pawn continues and it's outside the square. The square that I'm going to show the perimeter of the square. What good is it to know all the theory of chess if at the crucial moment you don't apply it? So now we promote, that's it. And that was an easy one. Let's see the second one that we missed. We wanted the bishop to go here to e3 to pin the rook. What else can we do? I can't see if queen takes here, can bishop check? I don't think so. Let's see what was the answer. Here we'll see the answer. More than half people got it. I didn't. Oh, yeah, yes. The rook, we forgot about the rook coming here from here. We only thought about the H file. And let's see the last one. Was it bishop to go to H3? Let's see. Yes. Now what was the second move? Bishop, queen takes bishop? Nope. So let's see the solution. How can we get mother pawn? Yes, we take it with a rook and we threaten the knight. So we got 42 correct. Near the record, but not yet. And we could have had more if only we had not missed the very first one. That is no excuse. The other two, yes, we tried, we had good attempts, but that's it for now. Lessons in the game doesn't matter how much theory you know of chess, how much skill and knowledge you have, if during the game you cannot put it into action, No good. We'll continue. What do we have ahead? Play bots. The next bot is going to be the last of the 1700s, Isla from New Zealand. And how do our tournaments going? We still have 8 out of 64 registered for the grecochess 64. Who knows when it's going to start? And in the annual chess.com daily championship, I advanced the second round. As you see, we are near the end of the first round, 13 games remaining. And in each of them, because they have made it until at least the 51st move. So this should be ending quite soon. And let's see the Moonlight Underwater, how it's going. We are near the end of the semifinals, and we already know the 6 finalists. You see what's happening. 2 games remain in each of the 2 groups, but no matter what happens, it's not going to change anything. Mebius, Steam Rocket, and Sinan Fu have advanced from Group 1, and PG74, Maxim Govoruka, and AMMT from Group 2 had advanced to the final round. Well, that's it for now. Thanks for watching, to the viewers, to the subscribers, to the likes and the comments. This is grecochess. I'm your host, Karilaos Aniziris. Goodbye.